once you have a shared appreciation of the culture from another country, and more importantly, a shared appreciation of the people who are behind the culture and behind the ideas, fueling all that, you learn to be able to talk to them better, and you learn to be able to value their opinion more. When you treat everyone as a foreigner, you don't necessarily give as much weight to what they're going to be saying. Music isn't going to solve the problems, but music, for example, might put people in the mindset where they're more willing to listen to each other. At the time, I was a senior at Yale University, and I had access to two great opportunities. One, the fact that the Yale School of Music was very close by, and we were able to tap upon many of the resources that they had. And two, I had a very good roommate at the time who was very much intimately familiar with classical music. Now, the other thing that both he and I were familiar with was the fact that there are different NYOs around the world. NYOs, of course, stand for National Youth Orchestras. Now, there's an NYO of USA, there's an NYO of Great Britain. China, in many ways, seems like the natural one to have, just because there are so many fantastic classical musicians in China. But the reality is, for whatever reason, NYO China did not exist. So what we did is we took it upon ourselves to really use the resources that we had at the time to make that idea a reality. Pretty much it didn't exist, so we decided to build it. Three-fourths of our students come from mainland China, and they come from China's best conservatories. I mean, the Central Conservatory of Music, the China Conservatory of Music, Shanghai Conservatory of Music, and a few of the other big ones. So I think the contrasts between our Chinese musicians in NYO China and the American musicians in NYO USA actually speak to what I think is the most important mission of the program. Now, if you were to take both those sets of students and put them in a room together and had them audition individually, our kids in NYO China would probably be better. They're technically brilliant. They get into the professional schools quite early in middle school, and they're just phenomenal in that sense. They work very hard and they sound very good. A funny thing happened though when we got our orchestra together for the first year, which was that when you got them all in a room together to perform with each other, they did not actually sound all that great when we had our first rehearsal. Now compare that to NYU USA, where the kids, are still phenomenal, but may not be as technically exceptional, but they sounded much better. They worked much better together. And the reason for that, I think, is a difference in the educational styles. China, in many ways, it's a culture of soloists, is what I would like to say. In China, artists like Lan Lang, they are afforded a certain celebrity that is just not true of classical music in the US. And there are other reasons for this too, but essentially what you have are parents very much pushing their students to be the best soloists that they can be. Teachers come around to serve that fact. They sometimes become quite possessive of their students, and they don't let them work with each other and collaborate. And that goes all the way up to the music conservatory. So, our first orchestra, about half of them had really never played in a large ensemble before. So again, what does this relate to the mission of NYO China? Well, our mission really is to make orchestral playing cool in China, amongst the young people in China. Not everyone's going to become a soloist, that's just impossible. But too many of them quit when they don't realize that dream. So what we want to do is make orchestral playing, make playing in an orchestra, something to aspire to in of itself, not just a plan B, but something that's really worth doing because orchestras across the world are phenomenal in their own right. The main thing that Chinese students can learn from their American counterparts is it's not just all about practicing by yourself in your room, and trying to set out to do the most complicated piece that you can find. It's really about finding musicians that you can work with, performing with them, working out your differences in opinion, learning different understanding of what a particular piece of music might be about. So if there's anything that the US needs to learn, I think, they can take great inspiration from just the tremendous amount of passion that classical music has in China. Right now is a moment for dialogue between the United States and China. And I don't always like the saying because it sounds a bit like a greeting card, but music really is an international language. It's the language through which much of this dialogue happens. I think it's important for more Americans to listen to art and artists coming out of China, whether or not that's exactly the stuff that, the type of music, the traditional Chinese music that has already come out of China, whether or not that's important for Americans to listen to. I'm not sure. I think, the reality is you can't force Americans or anyone to listen to something that they don't necessarily like. I think it's important for that exporting to happen from the other direction because in many ways, amongst the people who do listen, let's say professional composers or professional musicians, they'll be inspired by it. And they'll start incorporating some of those elements of traditional Chinese music into their own work. And that's actually kind of like a backdoor of getting Chinese culture more appreciated in the United States. But these are difficult questions. I think at the end of the day, really, you just want to encourage as much personal connection and personal dialogue as we can. And whether or not we're thinking of just taking American music and putting it in China, and Chinese music and putting it in America, I think the much more prudent thing, and the thing that so much more can come out of, is if you get them together and see what they can make together.